It's done. It's done. The initial 53-man roster is done. Today we're talking practice squad and every other roster update, including Rudy Ford, who go fast. And he fly fast to Green Bay to sign with the Packers quick. And we're going to be talking about that today. So hang around. Lombardi Time Brews starts right now. Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews. I am your host, John Del Rey. Very thankful to have you here with us today. Today, I know I said that today the plan was going to be covering all the different free agents that the Packers can pick up and how the roster is going to look different, and they already did part of it. So we're going to talk about that in the video here. We're going to talk about other little facts about the 53 that developed throughout the course of the evening last night, as well as this morning. I'm also going to be touching on a couple free agents that I think may still be in play, a couple veteran names. Not that the Packers are going to make the move, but these are guys that are at least worth thinking about at this time. At least worth a look to shore up some of the question mark depth on the roster. So before we completely dive in, I'm going to ask you, hit subscribe, hit share, hit like, do whatever you got to do to this podcast or video cast on YouTube. Continue to get the word out. I am incredibly thankful to say that yesterday's video had by far the biggest viewership that I have ever had. And remember, we're only 7 days into this. Today is my 8th episode. Yesterday's episode garnered almost 540 views. We doubled our subscriber count. I am so incredibly thankful for that, for this little channel that's just getting going to make any momentum, have any traction. Thanks so much for being a part of it. If you were here yesterday and you're back here today, thanks. If you've been here all along, thanks. If you're brand new to this, thank you. Keep sticking around. I'm going to keep putting out Packer content Monday through Friday, all year round. Different ideas, different conversation topics. We've got some guests coming up in the future weeks, including what could be our first collector day. So really looking forward to a future of talking Packers with all of you. And yesterday was a massive step forward. So if you're back again today, thank you so incredibly much. Let's dive into this. I've got a bunch of facts about the 53, not so much all about specific players, but just the 53 roster on the whole. So starting off, the Packers on their 53-man roster yesterday kept all 11 of their draft picks. Factor in the undrafted free agent, Jack Coco, that's 12 rookies that are going to be on this team. Keeping all of your draft picks when you have a standard 7 draft picks is quite something. Keeping 11 is a lot. Having 12 rookies on a 53-man roster, that is not a small amount. Gutekunst was asked in his press conference this morning about, what does that say about the state of the Packers? Or what does that say about Gutekunst as a drafter? And his response was, hopefully that we got it right. That the players are good. And if that turns out, that's awesome. I mean, that's exactly what you want to see, right? Ideally, every team every year would hang on to every single draft pick because it means that they drafted a guy good enough to warrant spots on your roster. The only question mark really is, are some of these GMs a little biased towards keeping their guys around? One of the obvious questions about that is going to come up later on in this episode. We're going to talk about it. Keeping a draft pick versus keeping a second-year, third-year guy who maybe showed a little bit more, at least during the preseason. So different things to talk about with that, but still, keeping 12 rookies is both a very good sign for the future, as well as a little bit of a warning flag for this year. 12 rookies is quite a bit. However, with that being said, they've got 12 rookies, and yet, according to Jimmy Jimmy Kempski, I'm sorry, of the Philadelphia Voice. I don't know how he does it, but apparently every year he compiles all of the ages of all of the players on every single team and comes up with the team average. For the Packers this year, they came in at 25.9 years of age, which ranked them 21st in the NFL. No longer a spring chicken team are the Green Bay Packers. I saw that and I was surprised. I mean, one, you're keeping 12 rookies. A couple of the rookies are a little older in the form of Jack Coco. Devontae Wyatt was 24 as a draft pick, so some of them are older, bumping it up a little bit. But I'm still very much used to the Ted Thompson years of the Packers are the third youngest team in the NFL, the fifth youngest team. It didn't feel like there was ever a year under Ted Thompson that we were beyond 10th in terms of average age. And now here we are, sitting 21st this year, 25.9 years of age. Just an interesting little something, a little factoid. And then the next bullet point is they have 18 new players on the roster this year. 18 guys who were not on the 53 last year. That's quite a bit. That's 34% of the roster with rounding, and when you break it down, that's a lot for a 13-win team. We know why a lot of it occurred, and a lot of it was the right move. It doesn't change the fact that that's quite a bit of turnover. 12 rookies, 6 other guys, 18 new players across the 53. I do think a big part of why is because for the first time they're looking at special teams differently. Goody even said in his press conference this morning that special teams had more weight in a lot of the bottom of the roster decisions than has been the case over several years. And admitting that is a good thing. He even said, when we've had repeated issues for repeated years when it comes to special teams, it's time to looking at doing something different. And so you saw yesterday in the initial 53, the safeties that they kept are all special teams type safeties, a depth anyway, behind Amos and Savage. Other spots on the team are designated special teams guys now that they're kept around more so for that purpose than they are to do offense or defense on the field. And Gutekunst said as much when he said in the past they were looking for special teamers that also would contribute on defense. And he didn't outright say that that wasn't the case this year, but he did mark it as a change, which of course leads you to believe that they got a couple guys in this roster that they don't necessarily want playing defense or offense, that these are just special teams guys. And a free agent signing that I'm going to cover here shortly really is emblematic of that. Just to update you, since I did in yesterday's video kind of leave it hanging a little bit, my goodness, the rosters were due at 3 o'clock to the NFL. Boy, did the Packers take their sweet time in putting out a press release saying who their 53 were. My goodness, I understand that the Packers are always one of the later teams in the NFL to release information. But holy buckets, when Bill Belichick for the New England Patriots beats you, So I got the video done yesterday. We were still waiting on 2 more releases. Those final 2 releases were Patrick Taylor and Ray Wilborn. Which means, I have to confess, I was wrong. A couple weeks ago, I stumped for the Packers to keep 4 running backs, then I changed it to 3. And then they did the thing. They did the thing that Packers Twitter had fallen in love with over the last couple of days and kept only 2 running backs. And I totally get the rationale why. I do think it was risky. I think they've seen themselves through the risk with the practice squad and how it's turned out. But still, this was risky in my opinion. I'm obviously thrilled that it worked out, but they did keep just 2 running backs by releasing Patrick Taylor and then inside linebacker Ray Wilborn. That really rounded out the 53. The Amari Rodgers experiment, I saw a bunch of talk yesterday about people talking about, well, Taylor's gone, Goodson's gone. That means Amari Rodgers is running back 3, right? He's like Ty Montgomery now, where he's more running back than he is wide receiver. And that certainly is not the case. What we're going to see is until Kylan Hill is ready to go, which at the earliest is week 5, until he's ready to go, we're going to see practice squad call-ups, I do believe. We're still going to see Tyler Goodson, still going to see Patrick Taylor, since, spoiler alert, both of them are back on the practice squad. I don't think it's just this thing that Amari Rodgers is suddenly RB3. No, we're still going to see Patrick Taylor and Tyler Goodson. However, Amari Rodgers playing running back was not just a mirage or a fun little thing in the preseason. And Gutekunst said as much this morning in his presser, that we may see Amari Rodgers play a little bit more running back, that helped give them faith in only going with 2 running backs, because Amari Rodgers did flash there in certain instances. I still don't think that Amari Rodgers at running back is going to be anything more than a wrinkle for the offense. It's a good break glass in case of emergency, definitely. But much like we've seen Randall Cobb, much like we've seen Ty Montgomery, Cobb obviously doing it better than Montgomery, but like we've seen these other guys in the past who start out as wide receivers and then do some stuff in the backfield, I think that's Amari Rodgers. I think it's a wrinkle. I think it's a nice little thing that they can throw into the offense, a break glass in case of emergency. But this is not the Packers saying Amari Rodgers is the de facto RB3. Patrick Taylor, Tyler Goodson are never going to suit up in a regular season game for the Packers. This is not that. Those 2 are still going to be around. I think that they just bought themselves extra roster space until Kylan Hill is ready to go later on in the season as he comes back from his ACL injury. You know, another consequence of letting go of Taylor and Wilborn was someone who actually made the roster. Jonathan Ford, the 7th round defensive tackle, he of the 6'5" and 333-pound frame. I'm actually very surprised that he made the roster. According to Pro Football Focus, he was one of the worst-rated Packer defensive players in all of the preseason. As I was there watching a lot of the camps, as I was reading all of the camp reports every single day, Jonathan Ford never flashed. He never stood out in a huge way, despite having a huge body. It just never came together. It never happened. And so I was of the thinking, all right, they're only going to keep 5 D linemen because they're going to play less this year. They're going to use Quay Walker more. They finally have better depth in other spots. They don't need all these 300-pound bodies, so they're going to keep 5. If they do keep 6, well, then it's probably going to be Jack Heflin, who's shown out the most during preseason, or it's going to be Chris Slayton, who came out of nowhere and really performed all preseason long. Jonathan Ford, in my opinion, was not someone who was on the radar to be kept on the 53. He's a genuine surprise. But as I was going through a lot of Twitter discourse last night, reading about different things, reading different player profiles, I did come across Sam Holman, who said, I think the most enlightening and best way to say it, he said, reviewing the roster, why do you keep Ford? Because Ford's probably only, of now the 6 D linemen on the roster, he's probably one of only 2 that's a true nose tackle. We know they're going to try to get Kenny Clark to play outside more this year. We know Jerron Reed historically has played mostly outside in the 3-4 defense. So TJ Slayton, he is a true 3-4 play above the center nose tackle. But then after TJ Slayton, who else do you got? If you want Kenny Clark to play out there, you want Jerron Reed to continue what he does and play out there. Dean Lowry is certainly a 3-4 end. Wyatt, more of an end than a tackle. You need someone to be that backup nose tackle, and that's Jonathan Ford. He is a true 3-4 nose tackle who can be behind TJ Slayton on the depth chart. That, to me, makes a lot of sense. The other angle that I saw people trying to present was, well, Jonathan Ford's a rookie. He was a draft choice this year, which, of course, gives you a little bit more leeway. But he has the benefit of all of these years of his rookie contract, all 4 years. My counter to that was, well, look at Jack Heflin. Jack Heflin's in year 2. So if Jack Heflin outplays Jonathan Ford, are you really willing to give the roster spot for 1 extra year? I wouldn't. But the nose tackle thing seems to make a lot more sense to me schematically, logically. I just think it makes the most sense and something that I can truly see. Jonathan Ford, the reason being, why he's on the 53. Moving on to the news of the day, and this was a big piece of news this morning. The Packers breaking into free agency to beef up one of the spots that we suspected they would be aiming to beef up. However, the reasons that they did it isn't necessarily to beef up that spot. Yeah, so Micah Abernathy, one of the best stories of the 53. The guy had been a Packer for all of 20 days, participated in his first defensive practice without a playbook. The darling of so many Packer fans' eyes lately, Micah Abernathy, his stint on the 53 was very, very short-lived as he was released this morning in favor of Rudy Ford. Rudy Ford, the safety and special team ace from Jacksonville, last year played in Jacksonville and really was brought in originally to be a special teams guy for Jacksonville. And all of a sudden, they kept on playing him, and he grew into a real defensive role. And he did okay in that role as a safety for Jacksonville. However, new staff this year, Doug Peterson coming in, they evaluated Rudy Ford over the course of the preseason, and they said, to us, he's just a special teams gunner, and we're going to move on. So because he's been in the league a certain number of years, he is not subject to waivers, which means the Packers were able to sign him right away today. They did not have to put in a waiver claim. They didn't have to wait. They just straight up got him on a plane and signed him. He takes the place of Micah Abernathy. Abernathy, who they are very much hoping to retain on the practice squad. Gutekunst spoke very highly of him this morning. I, for one, just as a fan of the story of Abernathy and the way that he played, I mean, I've been calling him a gamer since the day he got here. I wanted him on the 53. I do hope they retain him on the practice squad. I don't think his story is done yet. Looking at Ford specifically, he did not complete all of the RAS testing, but as he was a rookie in 2017, he had an incomplete RAS score of 921, which certainly makes him a Packer. He had a 4.4 40-yard dash time. For those of you who don't know, RAS scores are relative athletic scores. When someone is preparing for the NFL draft, they go through all of these tests at the combine. The RAS score, I don't understand the full formula for it. I'm not even sure it's out there for someone to try to ascertain. But it takes all of those metrics, your height, weight, 3-cone, 40-yard dash, bench press, etc., 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 and it compares them against historical other people at your position, and then it gives you a score. If you are a perfect 10, like 10.0, you are the most athletically gifted player at that position in the draft's history, really, as far as Barker's RAS scores go. If you're a 1, you're the flip side. You are not a good athlete for that position. And different guys can have different scores at different spots. Darnell Savage, who is more of a corner and safety coming into the league, he had a score in the high 8s as a safety and the low 9s as a corner. So just as an example, it can't change. But a 9.21 is obviously a very, very healthy RAS score, a very good one. This is an elite athlete. And the Packers in the last really 4 years have valued very high RAS score guys. So this makes a lot of sense. And when you're watching Rudy Ford, there was a few highlight clips making their ways around the internet this morning of him being a gunner. And dang, he is a good gunner. I mean, his tackling is extremely proficient. Last year, he had a 5.9% missed tackle rate for Jacksonville, by far the best of his career. He had a coverage grade when he did play those defensive snaps for Jacksonville, 59.4. Not bad. But I still have to think that this is much more of a special teams player for the Packers because of his gunning ability. I've been calling for 2 weeks for Rico Gafford to make the roster as the 6th corner because of his gunning ability, and you just can't teach 4.22 speed. Well, Rudy Ford already looks like the guy that I wanted Rico Gafford to be. Fast, great on teams, sure tackler. That's what you want in a gunner right there. So Rudy Ford, the addition makes a lot of sense. Hopefully it helps the special teams by adding in a sure tackler. I will note on the tackle percentage, his 5.9%, that was the best of his career. So hoping that that's not a statistical anomaly. hoping that he really has figured out the tackling game and that he continues at that rate. One other little tidbit just to throw in here about Rudy Ford. I mean, when I say the guy is a special teams ace, not kidding. In all of his career cumulatively, he's logged over 970 special team snaps already. It's a lot. I mean, this guy is a special teamer. An exciting pickup for a struggling unit for the Packers. Hopefully someone who can come in right away and help. In regards to Micah Abernathy and a lot of different things, yesterday I did get one listener question that I wanted to address. I attempted to answer it on Twitter, but, character limits, so I'm going to do a more full explanation here. And the question was, really what happens when a guy is cut? Like, do they have to call him? Do they got to get a hold of his agent? What does that process look like is essentially what the question was. And the truth is, when it comes to cutdown day, all of the players of the roster, all 78 that they had yesterday, come to Lambeau at their regular given times. Let's say you've got a meeting set up, there's a walkthrough, you've got rehab to do, you want to grab a meal, you want to get a haircut, whatever. All those things are at Lambeau for the players. And so they show up as they do. And there's one guy who is a designee of the front office or the coaching staff. And the nickname for that guy is the Turk. It's a closely guarded secret who the Turk is. I'm sure if you were to ask a released player, they may tell you. But it always is a closely guarded secret. And so that guy, his role in all of this, and amongst holding a job for the Packers, is when he sees one of these guys that's on the cut list, he goes up to him and says, "Hey, coach wants to see you, or Gutekunst wants to see you. Bring your tablet, bring your stuff." And then you know. Now, the Packers put a really heavy emphasis on when that player gets that message from the Turk, that it is Brian Gutekunst or Matt LaFleur that meets with them. And sometimes, just logistically and knowing the human nature of the business, I got to say that could be part of the holdup why the Packers always take so long to announce these things formally. Because, they got to schedule a lot of meetings. And the Packers do put a heavy emphasis on Goody or LaFleur doing the meetings, which is something I really like. Seems to be a class maneuver, at least in my eyes, that it's not some assistant coach, not some bottom tier guy saying, "All right, you're gone." But that's a Turk. A little bit more background on the Turk. I read one article that was leading up to this, just about the nature of this and how it all works. And there was a coach for the Rams in the 80s who actually, when it was cut down day, would have his Turk go wake guys up in the middle of the night and then do the meeting to cut them in the middle of the night so that A, they were gone by breakfast and they just had their full roster there, not everybody. The released guys were already gone. And then 2, they found that they were less angry if they were still waking up when they got the memo. We've come a long way in football since that garbage. I'm glad it's not that way anymore. I'm glad the Packers take the time to have it be Gutekunst or LaFleur who meets with most of these guys. It's the right way to do it. But as a full explanation, yes, that is it. After they talk to Brian or Matt, then it inevitably is calls home, calls to agent, notifying, etc., and beginning to put their life back together, figuring out the next course of action, whether that be practice squad, whether that be waivers, whatever it may be. So that's how it goes down on roster cutdown day. Now, in terms of the practice squad, as of recording, there are 14 of the 16 spots filled. 13 of the 14 actually come from the Packers. Tyler Goodson, Patrick Taylor, Caleb Jones. Caleb is a big one. Very glad that we got him back. Glad we got back both running backs, especially Tyler Goodson, who had kind of made some flash. A lot of Packer fans are concerned that he would go, but we do have both of them back. Caleb Jones as well. Probably the other massive fear that someone that big played that well during the preseason. Teams desperate for offensive tackles. A lot of people were afraid he would go, but he's back. Ramiz Ahmed, who if Crosby is not good to go, will be the kicker in week 1. Could very well be Crosby's successor. I know we said the same thing about Molson last year, but could very well be Crosby's successor if Crosby hangs it up after this year. So Ramiz Ahmed sticks around. Keandre Thomas and Rico Gafford both hang around. Travis Fulgham, a little surprised by that one, but the Packers retained him on the practice squad. Ladarius Hamilton and Kobe Jones, the outside linebackers, have both been retained. Chris Slayton and Jack Heflin, the defensive lineman who I alluded to earlier. Danny Etling, the quarterback, he's coming back. And then you do have Ray Wilborn, the inside linebacker. There are still hoping to get Juwan Winfrey and Micah Abernathy back. One other note about the practice squad is I don't recall the name off the top of my head, but they did bring in a defensive back from Jacksonville to be one of the 14 spots as well. Apparently there is a Jacksonville to Green Bay pipeline we never knew about, but he is on the practice squad as well. And then there's 2 open spots, which maybe they're doing a little bit of PR work, a little bit of relationship work with Juwan Winfrey and Micah Abernathy. Packers have been very clear, including Gutekunst this morning, that they do want Winfrey and Micah Abernathy back. But Winfrey, after having 12 speak out, after having a strong camp, may be feeling quite burned by another Packers release. He may be seeking to go on a practice squad elsewhere. Micah Abernathy, put out an interview with the USFL yesterday saying, like, you just got to keep working because he's become one of the USFL poster children for making an NFL roster. And it lasted 24 hours. He may be feeling burned. He put out a tweet earlier this morning saying, "It's a dirty business." Yeah, it is. And my heart goes out to him. We'll see. But the Packers are trying to get both of them back on the practice squad in order to have a complete 16-person practice squad. If the 2 of them are not brought back, they will find 2 more to fill the spots, but obviously the Packers have made their preference known that those are the 2 guys that they are looking for. Next, I'm going to go over this just very quickly. I am running long today. I'm sorry. There are a lot of notes with this roster to go over. But I'm just going to cover quickly 2 free agents that I think are still worth a look. One would be the outside linebacker, Kennard. His career high in sacks in a given season is 7. He's done that twice. He's a former Cardinal, former Lion. He did have a very solid year last year, according to PFF. However, it was only with 265 snaps. The guy has been a team captain before. He's been a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee before. By all accounts, is an extremely stand-up human being with a very strong missed tackle percentage, seems to be very good at tackling. Is he a substantial upgrade above and beyond what they have? He's an upgrade. How substantial? I don't know at this point in his career. Kennard's numbers, as well as the snaps, have gone down over the last 2 years. It was a very solid year last year, but it wasn't the most box score, light 'em up type year either, even in limited snaps. He's also getting up there in age. He's now going to be 31 throughout the course of the season, I believe. Could be someone that the Packers very well call. I mean, we know that there's also Jeremiah Atachu, there's Jason Pierre-Paul. There are other outside linebackers out there if they elect to make a move, but Kennard could very well be one to keep an eye on. The team captains, the Walter Payton's band, that's Packer people. And that kind of reputation around the league can buy you extra years in your career. Could warrant a phone call from the Packers at one of the spots that they are lightest. Speaking of spots where they're very, very light, another one would be the safety position. We know that they're very light there. Even after bringing in Rudy Ford, they're still light at the safety position. They're still looking for guys, I would think, that are true safeties, not just special teamers. You've got to have a number 3 safety on the team who plays safety. And it's possible, given what we saw, that Rasul Douglas may take some of those safety snaps. And goodness knows they're loaded at the top 3 at corner and the top 2 at safety. But after that, it gets scary fast. Nixon is more of a special teamer. Shmarjean Charles, yeah, he's a good corner. Are you going to rely on him to be a starter if there's a rash of injuries through your defensive backfield? Or at safety, Rudy Ford's got some experience at safety. Dallin Levitt has a little bit, but not much. And then you've got a 7th round draft pick, Tariq Carpenter. who's an inside linebacker safety hybrid. They could still use an actual true blue safety. And that's why I proposed Jaquiski Tartt. He was just released by I believe, by Philadelphia. He's 30. He's a 7-year vet. All of his full seasons have come in San Francisco. He has played 170 special team snaps a couple times in his career. It's been kind of on the downslope lately. That was earlier in his career. Still does play special teams quite a bit, though. As talking about how things have kind of been slipping for him, last year was his worst missed tackle percentage of his career. It was 15%. The rest of his career came in at about 10%. In terms of coverage for a lot of his career, he allows a passer rating of right around in the 80s. He did have one very, very strong year. It was year 3 of his career, so a few years ago. But someone who is an experienced NFL safety who has played in Frisco's defense, a very, very good defense for a very long time. Now you're going to ask him to potentially be a third safety if you make that call. It at least warrants consideration, right? There's a couple others out there that warrant at least some thought. I'll be talking about those later on in the week. I do not believe that the Packers are going to make a move immediately, but it's entirely possible that we're going to see the Packers make a move soon. One last note, a safety that I saw a lot of people clamoring for right before I hopped on to record, Tony Jefferson, the former Baltimore Raven, former Arizona Cardinal. He has signed with the Giants, reuniting with his former Baltimore defensive coordinator in Wink Martindale. So he is off the table. He will not be a Packer signing, which means that list of available safeties just got one person smaller, as the Packers may be looking to beef up their secondary depth. So, a lot of stuff. Went through all of it very quickly. I do apologize if I spoke too quickly at times, but that is everything with the 53-man roster. Join me for more episodes later this week as we continue to explore guys that are available on the market that may be available to beef up the roster. We're going to be talking about a couple collectible things because we're going to give the Dave Robinson collection some time from Heritage Auctions. And really, whatever other news comes up throughout the course of the week, I may be taking Friday off from the podcast. I will update you as the week goes. I have some personal things going on, like my brother moving, things like that this weekend. I will definitely be here on Monday. On Labor Day, I will definitely be here. Friday, I may not. That may be my holiday as the last weekend before the weekends become just mercilessly consumed all the way up through February and hopefully mid-February with a Packers Super Bowl run. So, that's it for this episode. If you liked what you heard today, hit subscribe, hit like, hit share. Thank you so much for building momentum on a video yesterday. Let's keep it going. Let's bring more people into the community. If you're not yet, follow me on Twitter. My @ is John Delray. It's just @ JONDELRAY. I'm consistently putting out Packer thoughts, retweets from the actual Pete reporters who have offices inside Lambeau, and just trying to give as much content as I can, spread knowledge, spread help, build another Packer community, and let's make this a great one. So, if you haven't yet, please follow me on Twitter @ John Delray. Hit like, hit subscribe, spread this around, and let's build a Packer community together. Thank you so much for checking out another video. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.